everyone, and welcome to the SPACECAT lecture. This will be a lecture that will cover SPACECAT, the rhetorical situation, and then also how to write a rhetorical précis. Now, I'm going to go over a lot of the things. They are represented in the slides, and of course, if you need me to look at anything prior to, just let me know. But without further ado, let's do SPACECAT. So SPACECAT is my favorite mnemonic device, and it covers what we consider the rhetorical situation. So your presentation that you're going to be doing for my class is a rhetorical analysis of a piece of writing, essays, nonfiction. But instead of doing it in a traditional essay style, since you just wrote your essay one and you'll be getting feedback from me, what you will be doing instead is something called a one-pager. More on that momentarily. So SPACECAT is how you look at the rhetorical situation in which a piece of writing or something was produced. So you look at if it was writing, or if it was a political cartoon, or if it is like a graphic novel or a painting. They all have a rhetorical situation and argumentation behind them. So when we're looking at argumentation, we want to look at these things: the speaker, the purpose, the audience, the context, the exigence, the choices, the appeals, and the tone. Okay, so I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about what all of that means. So bear with me here. Okay, so I'm going to skip a few slides just because I'm going to get to the bread and butter here, but please feel free to go through and look at any of these later if you need to. All right, so let's go ahead and start with this slide. And when we're looking at the speaker is when you put something out into the world, no matter what it is, you want to look at who is speaking. It's not necessarily the author. It's the character presenting the text. So who wrote it? What do we know about them? What do we not know about them? Does this text have a particular meaning because of who wrote and said it? And then if you go on to purpose, purpose is why something exists. You probably have heard things like to inform or to entertain, but it's like a purpose statement, like why was this produced? Did somebody want to enact change? If so, what is that change? So what do they want to accomplish by putting it out into the world? The audience is a little bit more complex than just everybody. The audience is going to be a targeted demographic, usually like, okay, well, if this is aiming toward like a certain subset of people, like if it's a subset like children or teenagers or like white Americans, Black Americans, you want to think about the audience of who the conversation is directed at, and then how do those assumptions about the audience impact the language that's being used. Then you're going to look at context. Context is what's going on in the world when whatever it was, the speech or the painting, whatever was put out into the world. So like World War II was something like the civil rights movement. Was there something like a big pervasive issue that was at play? Like, is there something about the fact that it was put in this time period that would say anything about the speaker or the message that's going out? Then, of course, there's exigence. Exigence is often confused with context. And so sometimes you have to dig a little bit, because exigence is why something was created when it was created. It's the spark. It's like, okay, so we had an event that took place, and that event sparked this person to write this speech. So you have to be kind of cognizant of like looking up things when you're not sure, just because that's going to help place a lot of those why now factors. Okay, so you're going to hear me harp on this a lot. Choices are incredibly important, because the choices that a rhetor or whoever is giving the speech makes is going to be based on who the audience is, and those choices and those moves are going to create that argument. So choices are way bigger than just, oh, well, the author chose to appeal to emotion. It's like, yeah, but there's so many different ways to appeal to people. They can appeal to people by arrangement, like the mode of something and how it is described, like using an argument, using process and definition, organizing it in a chronological order. You could have really formal diction, really informal diction. Your syntax could be long. You could have devices like parallelism and figurative language. So when you think about choices, you want to think far more about like how, like what kinds of specifics are going into this language in order for them to achieve the purpose. And here are just some possibilities of devices, but this is nowhere near a full list. But like these are common in speeches like chiasmus and structural choices, figurative language, claims and counterclaims, analogies, antithesis, and the definitions go on. And if you don't know what all of them are, that's all right. If you can describe what it is, it's going to be more effective that way. Then you're going to have appeals. Okay, so appeals, you've got your rhetorical triangle, ethos, pathos, logos. But you don't use ethos, you don't use pathos, you build it because you build that trust with your audience based on the choices that you make. So when you're building ethos, that's building credibility. That's like, why should we trust the speaker? If somebody is the president of the United States, we're going to trust what they have to say because they have that status, right? Then you appeal to emotion, use specific words and examples that get an emotional charge out of people. It's usually a very effective way to rhetorically persuade. And then you've got logos, and that's logic. That's the, okay, so because of my reasoning of the facts that I have given and all of the reasons that reinforce it, that's why I am right. So it is the logical conclusion that you must come to because of this information. And then last but not least, we have tone. So tone is the attitudes. You've got your list of tone words that are going to be on your documents for this week, but tone is, you know, nostalgic, condescending, patriotic. Those are all words that describe like the attitude that an author is trying to give off by giving the speech. So when you're practicing SPACECAT, especially when you practice on a speech or when you practice on something that is a little bit more difficult to analyze, you really want to look at the details. So I'm going to skip over to your one-pager and just kind of show you what I'm looking for. So the one-pager looks like this. So I'm going to scroll all the way down at the bottom so that you can see, because it's a long document. It's got like 46 pages. Don't worry, it's not, you don't have to do all 46 pages. But these are what the rhetorical analysis one-pagers will look like. And so they're very visual. So they have all of the elements surrounding them for the one-pager for SPACECAT in a visual format. You can do it on Canva. Canva is a great resource, or you can do it on paper in the old-fashioned way. Either way works for me, but they're going to be visual representations of a rhetorical analysis. So what I'm looking for up here as you scroll up is that you've got all of your SPACECAT elements on the page. You include 2 quotes, and then you're going to have a rhetorical précis paragraph on the back. Now, if you want to put them on the same document when you upload it to Moodle, that's totally fine with me. But on here, you will pick one of the speeches to use. And I do not care which one you do. You can pick which one. I have several examples. So you're going to pick one of those speeches to rhetorically analyze visually, and then to write a rhetorical précis. What is a rhetorical précis, you may be asking? Well, so the one-pager is the visual representation. The précis is the writing component. So when you do the writing component of a précis, it is a 4-sentence paragraph that is about a page long that focuses on all of the core components of the rhetorical analysis. So you're going to have 2 things. You're going to have a visual representation and you're going to have a written representation. And those will be the 2 things that will count as your essay 2. And so as you go through this document, you can see that rhetorical analysis is below the surface. So it's less obvious. You have to kind of reveal information. So when you're thinking about a rhetorical précis, when you're writing one, to go with your one-pager, it is a brief representation of what the text says and does. It's not a summary. I don't want to read summaries. I want you to analytically condense what you say, and I want you to focus in on how the text is controlling that that argument and that focus. Okay. So when you look through here, this is what a rhetorical précis looks like. And you're going to want to use some of these words for rhetorically active verbs and descriptions. And so you'll see that there's templates like this on your document. Author in the that this is the example. Toni Morrison in the essay Disturbing Nurses and Kindness of Sharks implies that racism in the United States has affected the craft and process of American novelists. And then sentence 2, Morrison supports her implication by describing how Ernest Hemingway writes about the Black characters in his novels and short stories. Please note, based on all your revision work that you've been doing, that I don't have any wasted words in here. These are all very specific rhetorically active verbs, right? Supports as opposed to like is or is doing. So make sure that your words are very controlled and that they're very precise. Her purpose is to make her readers aware of the cruel reality of racism underlying some of her greatest works of American literature in order to help them examine the far-reaching effects racism has, not only on those discriminated against, but also those who discriminate. So to recap, so here is the template that you're going to use for your rhetorical précis. And so this is the plug in that you were just seeing. And then I do have an example down here for you with also some tone words, your rubric. So just a lot of resources and tone word lists. So when you are doing your rhetorical one-pager, either this week or next, depending on which class you're in, what I want you to pay attention to is that when you're working on it, it's going to be one-page visual representation of a SPACECAT. And then the writing, which is a rhetorical précis. And this is taking the place of a reading response for the week. And it is difficult, but let me know if you have any questions and I'm happy to help anytime. So have a wonderful rest of your week. And I hope that this was helpful. Talk to you soon. Bye.